Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Xavier Harding. I am on the content team here at Mozilla Foundation, and we have another Dialogues and Debates for you. We have a great panel of folks today. Today's virtual Dialogues and Debates is called Memes, Misinfo, and the Election. Why are we talking about memes? We're talking about memes because political messaging is now no longer dispatched through TV, newspapers, blogs. It's dispatched through memes. Now, with a major US election on the horizon, three experts will discuss how the meme medium is shaping political discourse, spreading misinformation and all that fun stuff. So on our panel today is Dr. Joan Donovan, Research Director at Harvard Shorenstein Center and creator of Meme War Weekly. We've got Brandy Zadrozny, reporter at NBC News.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great day. We all admitted that we were all in sweatpants and pajama bottoms and basketball shorts. So I'm glad we're all on the same baseline level of understanding. And this is a tough question, so I hope you're ready for it. Here we go. What is a meme? Please tell us.
Day, right? I'm assuming everybody who's on this call has seen that's like a meme on Instagram or like a GIF on Reddit or a particular sound on TikTok. Like those make it more relevant to the people that they're actually sharing it with. And if we can add one more, that's when you start to see that they're this like emergent form of communication. It's culture. It's more than just the content than other types of media that we've dealt with in the past.
No, that's a great explanation. And I want to throw it to Dr. Donovan. I should mention that. So Dr. J, what is it about the meme format that is so good at spreading ideas because just don't? So what is it about memes that?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of Mozilla. Wish we could all be. One of the significant ways that we can, so not everything that goes online is a meme, right? But sometimes people just kind of use this as a blank. One is that memes don't tend to for people that are already part of an in-group, and they tend to reinforce those bonds. So this is why something like Pepe can be a bit of a trickster or liberatory figure. But in other contexts, he's just this probably US white supremacist, but for some time, which is to say that they have this kind of slogan attached to them, or there's something about the twist in the meme a meme that's been circulating lately, cheese to me imposter account, and they just kind of come back on the platform and are like,
not, it's just a complete coincidence. However, who knows what's going to happen.
But it's, it's funny. A green mouse be saying this. It doesn't make any sense. The template or the picture, you can end up in politics, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's kind of play show and tell with us, kind of show us a meme or memes that are misleading and also election related that you felt kind of stuck with you.
So I've been looking a lot at memes on the right. And so one misinformation that mail-in voting is somehow unreliable, that there's rampant vote, because usually the memes, whatever genre it is, have two sides. So we have the one from the far right, and it's from TikTok, and you can see it's this the text says something about like if you had a lottery the prior knowledge is activated in terms of like we've seen President Trump sort of seeding this idea since The Apprentice didn't win an Emmy, so that's a favorite of his that's tapped into here. And this guy, he is sort of a medium and tons of shares. So that was a real success. And you will see like Dr. Donovan was saying, how it sort of gets reinterpreted and changed. We see a lot of those just bare text. Then it's sort of like, it's just a react. And so that's why that's a really good one. Voting, there was a sort of reaction by the progressive left. And it was just really great. It's really fun and silly. And what's fun about this one too is, and interesting, and Kenyatta and Joan can talk about it better than I can, but the Lincoln Project stole that meme and put attribution to the original creator, which caused a whole nother stir, as in who is allowed to repurpose memes and who is allowed to be a meme. And that was a really
wow. Yeah, I do remember seeing that FanCam USPS ad, or not ad, just video online, and the internet running with it. Last time we spoke, you were talking about the kind of snowball effect that happens where Trump has a narrative, people online feed into it, and then it kind of.
I really think that the word digital soldiers, which is what the narrative that's seeded, and then they take that narrative and they create a bunch of content turned into a meme in a way that misinform our right websites, junk news sites, and then will make their way through the White House lectern. So it really is, it's a big feedback loop. Narrative and content that again feeds each other, and it's
the way to
a really good operation.
Describe it. Yeah, you tweet at Mozilla using the hashtag. So I want to throw it back to for me, I remember when memes were just like funny and just wholesome and funny jokes to we're ruining democracy. When did that shift happen?
There's a again, but the setup would change based on like who was like saying it to me and whoever I think this kind of weaponized content has always been here. It's been here long before any of us. I was thinking the other day about how much the rise of Web 2.0 kind of plays into this, right? It was like social media platforms and broadband that made all this possible. Memes were necessarily weaponized. I think the network itself
as well. But before that, Brandy brought up a really good point. You want that a little bit, Brandy? How, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of follow part of that, like, I think the Wall Street Journal said recommendation machine, the recommendation engine, which we don't trade in these disinformation memes, are sort of thriving and growing. And if people get out about this, actually, because I'm a former librarian, and, the library, if someone came in and said information that you wanted, what we're not going to do, and what the recommendation mission, you're going to love Mein Kampf, come take it. And if you love the Turner Diaries, you're going to love these guys. Come on, they're in the back. Between providing access to and amplifying and pushing, the worst of the worst videos. And the same thing, and how people see the memes that we're even talking about is because they're, pushed into these groups where these memes abound.
And
yeah, I mean, it's such a good point. Go ahead, Kenyatta, go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that, and I think is absolutely fascinating here in order to make this stuff more accessible, you're not going to, maybe you don't recommend Mein Kampf, but maybe you start off as a Pinterest blog, Save the Children, right? Slowly you feed in this other things because you've taken the trust, and I'm able to take that and flip that into, hey, by the way, you shouldn't vote.
And saying, I'm interested in German history, and then, 10 steps down.
That doing this really well, or when I say doing this really well, I mean combating this really well, or even,
really important that we disaggregate some of the tech as a hellscape is because some of their policy, and if we're not serving those communities, then it's not content. Also, can be very quick to react when things start to bubble up and become more of a horrible things went down, but we don't get the same kind of moderate because, when platforms talk about scale, that's code for free. Like the content is not in the content production realm, and so they've used that as a for accountability. And so over the last few years, it's been really interesting to watch platforms change their tone on these. Just yesterday, Facebook came out, and we're going to do on groups. They're anti-Semitic. They're full of dog whistles. And, it doesn't take a sociologist to tell you that if you allow Holocaust denial to proliferate unapologetic, the thing that plays into is actually the come and get something new every time. And so it's disingenuous for a platform like YouTube to say, well, we're just the library. That's not what you do. And that's not how your system works. And what platform are their consumers, not who are the users, but really who are the clients here? And mostly, we have to really significant impact on getting platforms to do anything about hate speech, incitement to violence, weaponized memes, because ultimately you don't want your ad for that Cisco comes to mind, but you don't want your ad for and so it's a difficult problem to talk about where the problem is, because each platform company is going to approach it really differently. But ultimately the only thing that's really compelled them to change isn't legal, it's not sanctions, it's really the public and reporters and civil society folks just saying enough is enough. We're going to.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought up the profits angle, because I think a lot of times companies have a lot to say, but ultimately you can just look at their platform, and also to take it down, and probably wouldn't hone in on that a little bit, would Facebook be ruined if they kind of went the Pinterest route and kind of didn't cater to certain audiences? Wouldn't they still kind of be in business? Is it really?
It's really hard to figure out exactly what the bottom line is, because they'll often push us to look at advertising. And that's just like paid for, like, did this group pay for X amount of advertising? And that works in some respects, but what we're talking about is monetizing in terms of creating sidebars. And that to me is something to especially know that when platform companies take action, they actually won't even produce it, right? And so profit can be a pretty significant incentive. The bottom line of their books are just like, wait, like 30 G's matters, and the amount.
I want to bring it back to memes and talk to Kenyatta about when a meme goes viral, what does that journey look like?
Dr. J and Brandy kind of piece part of those that journey together earlier. But it's always good to like make sure we're joke. Somebody comes up with a really great text to put on an image. They put it out there into a community that they trust. Where maybe they trust it because they're partially anonymous or because of people who they know. And it's a way of essentially testing that meme. Doesn't mean that it's done intentionally, but you put memes out there because you want people to react to it. But it can be a little fun. I can make it 5% funnier. So I'm going to actually make my own iteration of it. Then you see people go and make their own versions of that meme. Once those memes reach, I don't want to do the Darwin thing too much here. It made me laugh. It made me rage. It got me excited in some way. It aroused me psychologically in some way that I'm going to take it from this one community I'm in and I'm going to bring it over to this other one. So I'm going to take this thing, put it in my Instagram story. And that's when we start to see amplification happen. Amplification is a lot more and all these people who are looking to take these things and exploit them in some way. But once you amplify it, then you're giving it more surface area, which means that other people can take it en masse and replicate it themselves. And so you end up going through this sort of 4-phase thing: ideation, iteration, amplification, and then replication.
On one thing you mentioned earlier, just basically like the emotional part of memes. If you see a meme and it makes you laugh because it's relatable, it makes you laugh because it makes you pissed off at the world. There's an emotional trigger there. In a way, a headline that rolls in under your notification on your phone. So do you want to talk about how like kind of emotions kind of play into that and how they kind of play into being spread?
Oh yeah, this is in the years I've been doing it, this has been the most important piece for me. Personally, what happened within ourselves, it happened within our minds, within our bodies. First, to make sense of the world, there's a concept behind it called limbic resonance, which is the idea that when we share something, we unconsciously seek to sort of confirm our own experience, right? This is the emotional reaction I had to this thing, and if I'm outraged and you're outraged, then we have a sort of empathic bond for one another because we get each other. And we know from research into somatic experiences that when we take in stimuli through our senses, and then when we're aroused, these are things that don't just happen up here. The things that lead to decisions on where to put a feature or who to kick off the platform, who we keep, we have to understand that's more complex than we think, right? We experience new ideas through our senses, which creates an awareness. And that's the part that compels us to take action, like to get out there. And I think if we look at memes this way, for their effects on the mind, on the body, and our relationships, we start to see another dimension to all this. Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, these aren't just information.
It's so interesting to me how as tech gets better, it really exposes how the human being makeup is so exploitable.
Yeah, absolutely. But also there's, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to make sense of the world, and I'm looking to find those around me who share that experience. And if I can do that, then if I can share the emotion, then maybe I can check this out. And so that gets the piece that I think is absolutely key for understanding all of this. It's not necessarily, oh my God, all the dopamine stuff is bad, help solve problems in a way. And one of those problems is figuring out who we can trust.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We have a
Just
question.
Piggyback on that just
go
quickly,
ahead.
because I think groups are such a nexus for this kind of connection, emotional networks where people are reaching out. This is the thing where technologists say, see, it's awesome, and group, or to share specific kinds of emotionally high charged, high tension content that tends to circulate in groups that are getting amongst people who are becoming radicalized, right? That emotional piece is, when you would Google white supremacists or white nationalists, it would connect you directly to white nationalists. There wasn't like this, not without context, without structure, without curation, is how we ended up here. And so I do think that it's a feature of the design, and that's what we have to overcome here to deal with the course of the way in which we've interacted with technology has failed to see that some of the positive use cases are also features of the negative use cases.
Yeah, that makes me uncomfortable. We got a question from Twitter, so I want to make sure to get in some audience questions. This one's from Julie. It says, what steps should tech companies take to mitigate the spread and impact of harmful?
I mean, I got a list of things. Like, it's not, there was a really interesting op-ed that came out this week in Wired from Mike Anthony and Daniel Kreis about instituting a pause when certain high impact political influencers tweet. Is it a foreign policy crisis or a cascade of medical misinformation, right? And that notion of the pause actually comes from call-in radio back in the day when people wanted to have these, fun, culpable for that. Can that work at scale? No, but should be allowed to say anything. And anybody who identifies as a politician will get our content taken down if we were to say some of the things that these claimed. They want to show you politician speech, quote unquote, war to political elites for the design of these platforms is really what we're up against. There's photography, where you had to go, which was all the way through the store and into. And I'm not just talking about the hate speech. And these things should not be allowed to proliferate, right? And these communities should not be allowed to sort of form in the first place when people are looking for these activities. And so we need to we hired 10,000 content moderators to deal with our disinformation. So like, let's kick this up a notch and do good.
Brandy.
It's real, it's real. And then the other thing is, I think the quote unquote real Facebook oversight board, instead of the independent, and kind of pool their ideas. And so I've been that we got, and I think the web we got is not scale anymore now that.
For sure. I mean, go ahead, Kenyatta.
Okay, and can I ask, is that platforms seem to, I'm seeing shows tend to recognize
how Facebook did an internal audit of QAnon groups, and what they found was there were thousands of groups, millions of members. Their campaign to do something about this, there were a lot of, but one of the bullets in the PR notes was, don't look like we're doing this just because Twitter did something. So like, there is something very real about because Twitter had just done something a couple of weeks before, had really just throttled coronavirus. There was more of a connected effort to stop that medical misinformation on. Yet when they made that decision, it was more of like the grifter sort of snake oil salesman, all the other stuff, the extremism stuff, the political misinformation and disinformation. That stuff just seems way more siloed to me, and that they're very protective of what they're doing, and they're very aware of what other platforms.
When these memes disseminate, is it a single person? Is it a group of people? It seems like there's a lot of invisible labor that the end user may not see involved in this stuff.
Intelligently, then I can't ever have more knowledge here. But what I can say is that it seemed in 2016 like more of a sort of grassroots Chan, like the Donald effort to sort of spread these political memes sort of far and wide. And now, because in part QAnon, in part, just far, it seems like memes are sort of more prevalent and from more diverse starting lines. So like, and even when you say like, are memes sort of big business, you have Project Lincoln, which is, a gazillionaire pack at like using memes and with Fuck Jerry and that band. So it's like people, I think it's no longer we're no longer in the great meme war as it was in 2016. Like we've different ways where like now I'm seeing understand the origination, but now it's more diverse base, I think.
Yeah, oh man, the
I
internet is a
want to
scary
add,
place.
which constitutes a kind of feedback loop, but is very recursive in the sense that it learns from itself, thinking about what is really going to stick. And so, for instance, we have a very large new project coming out, hopefully on October 20th, called the Medium Jobs Not Mobs. And the way in which that sentiment and that slogan came into being has a lot to do with different strategic actors trying to get it in front of Trump. And in 20 happen or to make, Bank of America bad for America trend. But over time, people learn those techniques and they adapt and add ons that might start on a message board. And they're like, how do we get Donald Trump to tweet this? Was the game behind Jobs Not Mobs. And it took about 11 days. But people were really stuck on the phrase and the ears to the weeds moment where things are happening online, but also have this recursive conduit going through, our meet space or our offline lives. Trump tweeted it. There wasn't a lot of, it kind of dissipated, not mob signs. And we're just like standing there holding their signs for this thing that had like really, she just published with a co-author, You Are Here, like talks a bit of, those are teams of people that are making those decisions that are like, this is going to hit different. In most instances, if you're a meme maker, you don't really care if someone, politically persuade people. Pepe, which now, Matt Fury's going back and trying to exercise online. Politicians, political, it's not going to happen. No. But it's not that emotional happened that turned them.
The potential memes have for kind of misrepresentation, because you've written in the past.
Report that came out about anarchist networking online and all of these ACAB memes and FTP memes. So ACAB, graffiti of ACAB in probably every city across the globe. I have a picture of ACAB graffiti from Venice, like Venice, Italy, not Venice Beach. And it's just something that's been around, title of an NWA song. But there were these researchers that picked it up as a means against police officers. But one of the things that the report doesn't really look at is the context and the irony and the humor aspects of what memes really are. So like calls for violence, like look at how crazy this thing has become. Say that, they were really saying that, and that if you just looked at the preponderance of times people tweeted or posted ACAB on Reddit, for me, they misunderstand what a different issue. We've known since 2017 that a bunch of white supremacists have been pretending to be Antifa online to gin up this and make fetch happen. They pivoted to just generating Antifa. But this summer when Trump said, I'm going to outed themselves, they were like, listen, bro, we're double agents. We're not really Antifa. Facilitates this kind of anonymous communication. Researchers today, when we're trying to paint communities with these broad strokes and these broad brushes, memes are evidence of, and I just found reports like that to be like really.
There's a question we keep getting on Twitter and YouTube and can kind of tackle this one. We're seeing like a lot of memes about Kamala's parents, and why do you think that is if we do?
But I would not be surprised if that were that. I see this playing out, especially around, in this case, I've been seeing Chinese targeted with shadow candidate. In particular, this particular strain is fascinating because it talks about, it basically says that Biden is going to make the case to say that there's a increase in crime. They say that COVID's not contained. This for her to take over Harris government. But as part of it, along the way, there's lots of dog whistles that are all about race. There are lots of dog claim that things are about traditional Chinese values in order to make an argument that is based on emotion. It makes it hard to combat because of the fact that a lot of these memes about that draw on stereotypes, the Chinese WeChat groups that were started in order to create mutual aid groups at all, because that's somehow the right choice.
I haven't seen any sort of like qualitative look at, meme subjects, bazillion studies saying that, women, especially women of speech, threats, etc., online. And basically it showed definitively that women of harassment when compared to their male colleagues, except for Mitch McConnell, who the rule, that doesn't surprise me that women are the...
I don't even know what time is anymore. In the past, but recently, from Ultraviolet Cycle, and this came out before Harris had become the nominee. So I highly recommend that people look it up and take a read, because I think the disinformation opportunity is there. And there's candidates just to get a sense of like what's out there and what people think are insults, because it's the idea that she's the quote unquote female Obama. And I'm like, if that's your flavor of politic, right, then calling her the female, it's actually quantitatively different, but like it counts as disparaging in one community can actually be motivating in another. And so you have to think a lot about the community that is discussed. I'm like, the female Obama, like politic. But it's like, I think that positive attacks, especially the ones against Harris, who both come at her identity, they come at her race. I think ultimately that women, and especially women of color, down ballot candidates, as well as, the quote unquote squad, face a disproportionate amount of public harassment, which was why it was really kind of gnawing to see Twitter come out and remind people not to wish the president ill, knowing that daily thousands, and especially Ilhan Omar has been the subject of different disinformation campaigns, particularly one a couple weeks ago by Project Veritas that was removed from different platforms. And so I think it's really important that we look at who is being attacked on certain candidates, where if you're trying to communicate with a politician and anytime you get in their mentions, you're getting harassed in your replies, that's a problem. But it's also a feature.
That's a really good point. We have to wrap up the show soon. I don't think I want to end on her. Oh, okay. Yeah,
I want to keep going. I'm loving.
We can keep going.
Internet is forever. There's what is time online?
That's true. No, honestly though, I work now till like 9 p.m. I feel like. But I do want to encounter memes everywhere. So I want to ask, and I'll start with Kenyatta. Meme literacy. What should folks do, look out for? How can people meme responsibly?
Meme literacy. I think there's definitely a case to be made that I want to say that it's a generational thing, because I'm old and I just spend a lot of time in places. The more that you spend in those spaces, the more you kind of understand them, which is good, because as Joan was saying, it's really about the context more than anything else. As advice, though, I'm asking people to kind of concentrate on themselves and say, if you feel compelled to share something, to pause, to stop, to do that 7-second delay, and notice what it is that grabbed your awareness. Try to figure out what part of it actually aroused you or triggered you. How does that connect to your values, your emotions? I absolutely mean these are all things, and how those things manifest, because the actions that were being buttoned, copy and paste over to this other place, these aren't necessarily the things and so maybe if you can, pick an alternative action, do something else. I feel like we have to start with, but in terms of the things that we feel like we can take action on and have a positive outcome on right now, it's where I'm more aware of what I'm doing when I'm taking part in the meme economy.
I think Kenyatta, you really got to the heart of it. I think forms sort of machine, and that it's not like you win something as you are contributing to their profits. Like every time you engage, every group that you join. So my major get offline. We're just way too online. And I know it's hard in the pandemic, but I truly, truly believe that people need to log off.
Yeah, watch Mozilla stuff first, and then we're finished, then log off. Dr. Joan, Dr. J, how
the impulse to get into a meme war with folks is just it's not helpful. Although if it's funny, it's funny, right? If you're sharing some Jersey Shore memes and you're, oh yeah, and when it's triggering these outrage emotions where you're like, can you believe this kind of stuff? Yeah, that is like low grade and if you opt out, you can often think about yourself as a more responsible steward of information amongst people in your networks that depend on you. But I want to close on a note about advocacy, which is to say that flat earthers, Holocaust deniers, vicious racists in this moment, gaming the systems, they are thinking strategically about how they get taken up by, and it's because the truth is so obvious to some of us. But at this stage, when we need to think again about these systems are not built for truth. They're not built for trust. They're built for in terms of getting ourselves medical advice, which is then bound up with all this grift. So right now, I want to impress upon people that truth needs an advocate, timely, local, relevant content for the folks who depend on you daily for their laugh.
Just wanted to vocalize that
Thank
for
you.
everyone watching. Well, that was our panel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Kenyatta, Randy, Dr. Joan for being with us today. We have more Dialogues and Debates panels coming up later this year, next year. So make sure to keep on checking Foundation.